So today's cardinal lesson, we're on the first worry, Social Security, and we're on episode 2 of 8. And just to refresh memories, the first session that we shot, which ran last week, tells you about the whole picture, Tom and Susan and their financial plan that we're preparing for them, that we have prepared for them. And this whole series is about what you get in a financial plan and learning about that. And today's episode is going to be about Social Security, and then we're just going to we're going to be through 8 sessions when we go through each topic and just kind of dive into Social Security. And so Tom's going to share with you, why are we doing this video on Social Security Day, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing this video because when you are retiring, one of the first decisions you have to make is, do I start Social Security or do I wait? And that decision is going to live with you the rest of your retirement. So you need to be thoughtful about it. You need to make the right decision and think through it, right? A lot of people, they come in and say, I'm retiring, I start Social Security. And sometimes that is the right answer, and sometimes it's not. So we want to spend some time really digging into that. And when we're doing plans, that's often where we start with is, what are we doing with Social Security? Because ultimately, it's one of the biggest decisions you're going to make. And so let me bring up the show notes. You can find these below our link on our video. They're also at our website at cardinalguide.com. We have the board, and we'll get into all the details on the board. We actually have the Social Security statements where we can see what the amounts are at various ages. We'll get to the examples in a second. So this is Tom's benefit. You can see at 68, it's 42.98, 69, 46.57, it's 70, which is, again, as a reminder, we went over this in our first video. His default position when he met us, he was planning on waiting until 70 to get this maximum check, 5,176. The next statement is Susan's benefit. Again, she was a stay-at-home mom most of her adult life. She worked early in her career, which is why she has some checks. But if she filed only on her record at her full retirement age of 66 and 10 months, it's $874 a month. And then you can see it there. Again, we'll get into the spousal benefits as we go through the video. And then we have the plan like we did in the previous video. And all 8 of these are all, we have 8 videos in total. The 7 content ones will have the plan along with the appendix in every single one. So you can reference back that and see how they all interact with each other there. So that's also here. So let me turn it back to Hans. We'll go through some of the examples. And then a little bit later, we'll get into Right Capital, which is where we started last plan. That's where we do a lot of our projections for our financial plans.
Okay, so just remember, we met Tom and Susan when Tom was turning 65 3 years ago. He was buying Medicare insurance from us. He watched all the videos and kind of knew what he wanted. We talked to him about financial planning. I'm not retired yet. We'll get to that. And here it is, 3 years later, he's retiring. And now, he says, let's do a financial plan. And where he was all along is he's like, I'm waiting till I'm 70 and I want to get that largest Social Security check, 5176 a month is the projection. I'll just wait till I'm 70 and I don't need the money. I can wait. I want to get it as big as it possibly can. Okay. Now comes Susan into the picture. And when we showed her Social Security check at full retirement at 66 and 10 months is $874. And she, of course, didn't really have to say it, but she felt kind of little. So her contribution is going to be $874 a month. His is going to be $51.76 a month, and we got to wait a little while for that. And this really doesn't have to do with the dollars and cents. It's just kind of like, really? Yeah, that's all I get for a Social Security check. And we said, aha, but you're eligible for the spousal benefit, and you can get half of what Thomas gets. So she just kind of left with that. This is a conversation back 3 years ago. So she's thinking, I don't want that small Social Security check. I want the $2,000 a month Social Security, or it's really like $1997. But $2,000 a month sounds a lot better than $874, and it at least did to her, and it just kind of put the conversation on ice. So now we're doing the plan. We get the Social Security statements out. We look at them and we say, okay, so Tom, you're going to get nothing for 2 years because you're not 70 yet. You're just turning 68. And Susan, you're going to get $874 a month. And she's like, I want that half of his. And it looks like to me that's $2,600 a month. I want that now. Well, first of all, it's not $2,600. That's not correct because it's half of some different number. And the second thing is you can't get the half of his until he files. And he's not going to do that for 2 years. So she wasn't too happy with that. So then we went back and ran the numbers and we said, okay, if Tom will take his Social Security now, it's almost $4,300 a month. So it's $900 a month less, almost $900 a month less. That's for life. I mean, so that's a big deal. But you're also going to get $4,300 a month checks for 2 years that you wouldn't have gotten. So he's going to get almost 100 grand, or a little more than 100 grand that he wouldn't have gotten. So when he reaches 70, he's going to have a smaller check, but he's going to have 100 grand in the bank or something thereabouts. I'm simplifying this conversation, but most important, and the real reason to do it, is it's going to keep your wife happy because you have to file for her to get the 50%. And the 50%, or the almost $2,000 a month, is based on what Tom's check would have been if he'd have filed at full retirement. So to her, this is a measure of what she's contributing to the household from Social Security. It's just, let's cut through the baloney here. And so it's $2,000 a month for her, $4,300 a month for him. They're going to get the checks right away. And that's kind of, so what we had to do as financial planners is we had to make sure this makes sense. And it may not have been what we recommended, but it is what we're going to recommend as long as it makes a little bit of sense and it keeps her happy, him happy, and it actually improves their cash flow for a couple of years. So I want to push it to Tom, and I want Tom to kind of react to all that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it illustrates that the financial plan is not all about the dollar signs, the money in the sense, right? I mean, I could sit here and make an argument, yeah, it makes sense to wait till 70, here's all the reasons to do it. But we want to listen to you, right? If you have an opinion or you have thoughts, right, that takes some weight in our discussions, right? And so in this situation, we listened to her. It was very clear she really wanted that higher check. And so what we set out to do is say, okay, well, let's run it in both models. Let's see what it looks like by taking it sooner. And really what I'm looking to see is, does this taking it sooner cause you guys are you shooting yourself in the foot too much, right? Like if they were at 62, they would have gotten a lot more pushback from us. Like, that's too soon to take it. You shouldn't do it. And we would have run through the numbers and showed them that. But we're looking at taking him at 68 versus 70. Yes, they'd get a higher check. They have other money, right? It's not like this is their only decision they need to make. And so we want to just stress test the plan and see, okay, what does it look like here? And if we're going to be okay in either scenario, then we want to take we want your opinion on where you're at. And so that's sort of how we approach that conversation. But I do want to show you how it works within the software, right? I mean, we're always going back to the right capital. And again, the right capital is going to tell us the quote unquote optimal strategy is one thing, but we want to look to see, okay, if we take it sooner, what does that look like? So let me show you how we do that within the software here. And so again, this is the home screen. We went over this on the last video. I'm not going to go into nearly as much depth on every screen, but we are going to dig into a couple pieces here. But just as a reminder, on the income, we've plugged in the benefits they would get at 68 for him, for Tom, which is $42.98, and then for Susan, it's $874. And again, the software does all the calculations for the spousal benefits. So when we go to the retirement tab, and one of the things, if you don't have a right capital software or account, this doesn't really much matter. But just know, if you're in here, you can sort of click down on the different menus. So we have the tabs, then we have more tabs, and within that you can click further down. So there's always, I shouldn't say always, but there's a lot more details as you click through the software here. But we're going to click on the retirement tab for a second, and you'll notice the current plan and proposed plan right now is modeled as Tom filing at 68, Susan filing at her full retirement age. But I can tell it, say, I want you to solve for quote unquote the optimal strategy. And you'll see the optimal strategy is him waiting till 70 and Susan filing at 66 or 67 or 66 and 8 months, her full retirement age. One thing to take into consideration is just remember that in the software, we have both of them living to age 95. That's a big assumption. Will they both live to 95? I mean, I don't know. I mean, we obviously can't predict that. If we knew for certain both would live to 95, then maybe it makes sense to wait till 70. But the question becomes is where is that crossover point? Where is the point where you would get more from Social Security, total amount from Social Security versus a lower amount? And you can actually see that on the Social Security page. So retirement, Social Security, what I'm going to do is compare the optimal strategy to the current strategy. And just as a reminder, optimal strategy is Tom waiting until 70, Susan filing at her full retirement age. Current strategy is Susan filing at her full retirement age right at the same time Tom is filing for his, so she gets the spousal benefit. So when we look at, I like looking at this because it gives us, it's sort of the scale is hard to kind of see. But what you're seeing is the current strategy is they get a higher check now because they're getting money in currently, right? As we're getting those checks in, between 68 and 70 for Tom, he's not getting that big check. And then she's also getting less. So if we just went to by age 70, right, you can see the numbers by age 70. Oh, let me go back here. On the current strategy, they would have received $184,000 from Social Security and only like 56,000 from it would be her check for those 2 years essentially. Um, but one of the question is where is that crossover point? Where is the point where you would have gotten more from by waiting till 70? And it's at Tom's age 84, right? So at the end of the day, this helped him get a little bit more comfortable with going ahead and filing because he was still kind of wanting to take it at 70. Susan really wanted to take it sooner. When I showed him this, he sort of eased his stance a little bit. It's like, okay, well, my crossover point is 84. I might not even make it to 84. So it softened him a little bit, more willing to consider starting sooner. So that's one thing we looked at. The next thing we looked at is what does this do from a cash flow perspective, right? So we're looking at cash flows, and we can see under the income. So he's got his partial year salary, and as soon as he retires, the Social Security checks start, right? So they immediately start getting some money coming in. It's only a partial year in 2026 because we're waiting until he retires to file for these benefits. But we looked at 2027. I mean, they're getting, and the software does assume some cost of living adjustments, but they're getting over $76,000 from Social Security alone. That is a great starting baseline income number for them to plan the rest of their life around. So again, it's a nice benefit. It gets some cash coming in right now as soon as they retire. So he liked that. Then a question came up: well, how much taxes do we have to pay on this? Because he kind of knew, taxes on Social Security are important. We won't get into too much detail on this, but essentially, how they tax Social Security is it's based upon your other income. So as you have other income, more of your Social Security becomes taxable. Up to 85% of your check can be considered taxable income. Another way to put that, everyone gets at least 15% of their check tax free, and then up to 85% could be taxable income. That's not 85% tax, it's just taxable income that gets put onto your tax return, and then you look at the tax brackets you're in. And we can actually model that here. We can see what that looks like. Now, again, all these are projections. This does have the Roth conversion component built in. So again, as a reminder from our previous video, and we'll have another video where we get into Roth conversions later, is we are converting up to the point where they are not paying any IRMA. So no additional cost for Medicare. That's the limit that we're targeting for Roth conversions. But under this tax estimate and details, we actually have model tax returns projected into the future. So I'm going to go to 2027 to show a full year. So, we have some interest coming in, some dividends coming in, so the IRA distributions. This is where the annuity and the Roth conversions are coming into play there. Or excuse me, the annuities is here. This is the 33,000 as the Roth conversions is what we're modeling here. But you'll notice Social Security. So we have $76,000 coming in from Social Security. The software is doing all the calculations of how much of that is taxable. And you'll notice 85% of their check is taxable income. So when you're doing the projections and stuff, when we're looking at tax brackets, you need to account for 85% of this number is taxable income. And then it does all the calculations for the Roth conversions to determine where the number is, avoiding IRMA, avoiding all those things. So the software is doing all of that calculations. But at the end of the day, the Social Security is an important decision. He came in wanting to wait, which is a lot of time what we're recommending. But it was really Susan who was driving her wanting to get some. As we ran through the process, showed him what the different amounts were, he kind of realized, okay, this isn't going to hurt me in the long run too much by taking it now versus waiting till 70. And it makes her happy. That was all he needed to really hear. He said, okay, we'll go ahead and file as soon as they retire, which happens to be right at when Susan is at her full retirement age. So that worked out pretty nicely. But they get that full check or her full spousal benefit that she's eligible for as soon as she becomes eligible for it. He gets the over $4,000 a month coming in, and they sort of lived happily ever after. So that's how we approach the Social Security decision. Again, not every situation is the same. Not every recommendation is the same. And we take into account your opinion. I mean, I could go through another example, not with Tom and Susan, but I've had plenty of clients that come in, have plenty of money they could live off. It makes all the sense in the world to delay it. They say, I've waited this long. I don't care what the numbers say. I want my check. We say, okay, we build the plan out or one next. So the planning process is collaborative, really trying to get you guys into the best position possible. And with the full information that you can have, right? At least you're making the decision with full clarity. You know what the decision you're making and what impact it has on everything else, and you can be happy with that decision you make.
Okay. So what we want to talk about here is, first of all, the survivor. So, I mean, not all couples, both of them live till 95. In fact, few of them do. So somebody is going to pass away and we're going to leave a survivor. And I want to simplify what happens is when either Susan or Tom passes away, when the first one of them passes away, the survivor is going to get Tom's check. And had he waited till 70 and then filed, and then he died at like 78, then Susan is going to live on. If she's living on, she's going to live on with his larger check. So the estate planning issue here would say, maybe wait till 70, because we want to preserve that large check because the smaller one's going to stop. And what became the priority was Susan's check. And I agree with Tom, and I agree with the other Tom that's in the plan. Happy wife, happy life. So her getting a $2,000 a month check as opposed to an $874 check became the driving factor. That's what we did. Her check of $2,000 a month and then adjusted for inflation is going to stop when the first one of them dies, even if it's Tom. So the larger check lives on. That's the estate planning issue with Social Security. It's just that simple. As you want disproportionate checks, you want that larger check, the largest check, to be as large as it can be, because it'll live on for the survivor when they have to live with only one check. Okay, Tom, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's feelings on this are different, right? Some people like getting that higher check, and we often recommend getting the higher check. But other people kind of want the money now. And the biggest thing is when we're doing planning is if we're going to make a decision that is maybe not the optimal decision, we just need to make sure that we're not causing you to have problems later in life on other areas, right? So, I mean, for example, if they didn't have as much money saved up, this might have been a harder decision to stomach, right? Is because if he were to predecease her early on and she gets a lower check, if they didn't have other income, that could be a problem to replace. And so there's a lot of factors that go into this. But we want to look at all factors, see how it impacts everything, make sure that when we're making a decision, we know what the flow through sort of the other areas that impacts as part of the plan. And that's where the whole plan is helpful. It's like when we're writing the recommendations, we're considering everything, right? We're seeing how it impacts all these different 7 areas as opposed to just the one area, including because the other risk I see people come in is they're only looking at their check and they're not considering the spousal benefit to the estate planning problem that Hans mentioned. And oftentimes it's the husbands coming in. They say, "Well, my dad died at 80. I'm not going to make it to 85. Like, I just want my money now." It's like, okay, like that makes sense, except for the fact you're ignoring that your wife might live on to 100, and are we causing her to have problems later on? They've never thought about that. So I just want you, when you're making a decision, I just want you to consider all aspects, and that way you can make the decision with full clarity. You know what decision you're making. You know what the opportunity cost, what options you're giving up. And as long as you have done that exercise and you're comfortable with the decision, then great, let's move forward. But too often I see people make decisions not having thought through any of this stuff. And sometimes it's too late. We can't undo it, and it could be, costly down the road.
Sure. So we talked about the estate planning. We're going to talk about income. I mean, these people have several $1,000,000 of net worth. They're retiring on a high income. Just understand right out of the box, about half their money is coming from Social Security. It's almost half. That's significant in the income plan. And then talking about taxes, if these people stay below the first IRMA threshold in their Roth conversions, which it looks like they're doing to in the plan, their overall income tax that they're going to be paying on Social Security isn't really going to be that high. I mean, what I'm telling you is they're keeping their income at 200,000 and below, which they can easily do with that large of a Social Security check. Their income tax situation overall is going to be a relatively low amount on that Social Security. So I'd like to bring Tom back on. I'm Hans Scheil.
And I'm Tom Griffith.
And we thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.